So my husband and I only spent $90 and have already generated over $700 in net profit on a particular private pick in our local area, in which we only spent less than 45 minutes at this particular property. Let me tell you how we did it. I found this particular pick to be pretty unique, in which, again, my husband was on Craigslist and noticed on one of the pictures in the ad that there was a piece of coral tucked away. And if you're not on to coral, I think you need to really look into it, because I sell, if I can find it, coral for a lot of money. I'll throw a picture up here to show you an example of a colored piece that I sold not that long ago for $155. And yes, they are a pain to ship, but they are well worth the profit, especially if you're getting it for $5 to $10, in which this particular piece I got for $10. But he noticed that there was a piece of coral in this photo, and he's like, oh my gosh, let me see if I can get in early on this sale, because I'm sure there's probably other cool stuff there. Even though the pictures did not show, based on that one piece, it was worth our time going in. So he ended up emailing him through Craigslist, and the seller responded back and said, yeah, sure, you want to come by later today? So we said yes. We scheduled a time, and we went ahead and jumped in the truck and ran over there pretty much. And it was a pretty cool setup. It was a large shop. He was actually looking to sell his property, which was multi-generational. When someone tells you that, there's got to be something in there that's pretty cool, right? That's kind of the key hot word, multi-generational, that I've found in my experience. So he went ahead and said, yeah, come on in. It's just you guys. I'm not letting anyone else in, but you seem like you're cool. So go ahead and take a look around. And in the back of this shop, there was tons of art. And I went back there and I noticed that it looked very old. There was antique art, there was vintage art, and styles that were that were highly desirable, such as florals. There was some pieces that I wasn't sure about, but I went ahead and threw them in a pile anyway, because they were $1 a piece. So $1, I could not believe it. I mean, you cannot find art at estate sales or even at a garage sale really for $1. And these were handmade works, unbelievable. And he just told us that he needed to move this stuff out. There was probably a lot of value in these, but he didn't care. Came from multi-generations, and he just had to clear it out. And it was a pretty well-known family in our area who owned a lot of land. And this was unfortunately the last of that property, and which is kind of sad. But it was a great pick. He was a really nice guy. We got a very large ladder out of the deal. I picked up this interesting smaller piece of furniture. I don't like doing furniture, but this particular piece was manageable in size. And it actually was an old record holder from back in the day. I thought was neat. So I learned something there. And yeah, so we went ahead and loaded up the truck. And let me kind of go through the top 10 items that generated the most profit on this sale. Thanks. I'll be up front and tell you that I did not do a good job tracking how many items were at this sale. This was kind of before my idea of starting a YouTube channel to document these things, but I would say estimation probably around 18 to 20 items. And I'm just going to show you my top 10 based on the coolness factor and just rarity of these items, for me especially, because I have never really dove into antiques before. So this is kind of one of those unique sales in my mind that kind of helped open the door to the antique world. And this was one of those, and that was a antique primitive Androck metal dish dryer. And what was cool about this is that, well, for one, it's old, and two, it was only $5. And three is that when I was doing my research, some of them that have sold in the past did not have this piece here, and that was for cutlery. And so that was kind of nice that this was still intact, which increased the value quite a bit, and which I actually got $95 plus $13 for shipping on Facebook Marketplace, and it sold in less than a day. If you're not picking up stuff that is relevant to your home state, I would highly advise doing that. I always try to find historical elements that pertain to the state of Oregon because that's where I reside. But this was really cool. It was a vintage framed Oregon Trail historical map, and it looked really old. When I was doing some research on it, I could see that there was a lot of replicas of this, but I mean, I don't know if this was the original to this type of drawing, but it was pretty cool. Um, I actually thought the size was great. It was a 35 by 20. People really gravitate to those long rectangular art pieces. And I actually was able to sell this in 7 days for my full asking price from a person that came actually from the coast, probably drove an hour and a half to get here to pick this up. So that was pretty exciting. We're up on the coast, so when I see anything that looks like a ship or is nautical in any sense, I always grab it. Not only because I love it, but I know there is a whole world of customers that also love it. I sell nautical items very, very quickly. And this was an interesting one. It was an antique lithograph frame print of the USS Constitution by Gordon Grant. And I fell asleep in history class, so I do not remember any of this information, but it was great because it kind of pushed me back into learning the history of our country. And this one was actually commissioned in 1925 to help raise money to restore this ship. So millions of these lithographs were sold to the public, including school children donating pennies to fund this restoration. And as you can see here, they actually used a unique way of hanging this painting that really meshed well with the fishing and nautical type vibe. And so this actually was a larger piece, but I was able to get my full asking price of $85, and it sold in only 5 days. My husband wasn't sure about this piece as he didn't really want me to pick it up, but I was really drawn to it because of the black and gold contrast as well as this knight. It was just interesting, and looking further into this piece, it was actually a vintage English brass rubbing of Henry Paris from 1427, and this one actually had a little plaque here that showed who made this rubbing. I don't know much about rubbings, but it just looked really cool, and it was framed really well. It did have a little bit of issue here, but it sold for my full asking price of $75, and it sold within a day. This is that furniture piece that I was talking about earlier, and it was actually an antique sheet music cabinet, or a record organizer is what maybe more modern people use it for. But you can tell here from the photos that the condition wasn't great, right? Like there was some cracks, there was some issues, dings and dents throughout, but it actually still sold from someone that came from Portland, and they asked if they could take it for $65, of which I agreed to. I just wanted to get it out of my garage because it was taking up space. But I'm just glad someone can use it because this person was going to actually refinish it. I thought this was a cool lamp, and especially with the red glass piece in the middle, and it was made in the United States. So of course anything USA I pick up, especially when it comes to vintage and antiques. So in this particular case, I actually had a buyer who reached out to me and said, could you do 45? And when somebody reaches out to me directly on Marketplace, I do, of course, respond, but also try to capture that sale on a private sale. So in this case, I could get them down to 45 if we did a private deal because I'm not really getting dinged on any of the Marketplace fees. So we'd made an agreement. I said, hey, yes, I can do that, but I'll have to ship it to you through my own private shipping service, and he agreed. So he was really excited about it because he sent me a photo of this lamp along with his other collection of lamps to me once it arrived, and that really made my day. It sold for $45 in less than 3 days. I really liked this piece and thought it was unique, even though it was a print. My husband didn't really like it that much and didn't really want me to pick it up. But again, these items were only like $1 a piece, so why not try it out? Even though it was glass encased, it was really in good condition. You can see the detail here in that print. But what really stood out is that it was the #1 in the Vermeer color print series that was published in New York. So it was authorized by the Metropolitan Museum of Art, which I thought would add some value to this. And I did kept getting offers, at around $55 to $60, of which I held out. There was one woman who reached out to me a couple times at the $60 price range, and I just wrote to her and I said, look, due to the idea that this has glass, it will take me extra time to package it, and I just want to make sure that that's valued. And she actually purchased it right away for $75 plus shipping, and that sold in 18 days. This item was pretty heavy as it was solid wood. You can see it was hand carved, really beautiful wood, nice details here. I didn't understand exactly what this piece was. It looked Native American, of course, but looking further into it, it's actually was made by Amos Wallace, who did a lot of work as far as totem poles and that kind of thing in Alaska. So I thought, wow, that's pretty special. I wish I had both of them because they were supposed to be bookends, but it ended up selling for $45 in less than a day. So I don't think it mattered in this case with not having the other bookend to make this a pair. Moving on from Facebook Marketplace, I did want to share a couple other sales that I was able to grab on eBay, and this was actually a funny one. My husband found this in one of the toy chests in this particular sale, and it was only 50 cents. So he thought, well, I mean, it is movie related. Saw is pretty popular. Let's give this a try. So we threw it in the pile. It did not work initially with the eyes. We had to look that up because I didn't realize the eyes lit up. But he was able to just simply replace that battery. And it sold for, I took a best offer of $65, free shipping, and it sold in less than a day. This was one of 3 Japanese prints that I picked up at this sale. I do not know much about Japanese artwork, but this one really had a great color palette, and it had a lot of really interesting texture. You can see here. I mean, look at this. Very cool. And it ended up being a original Japanese woodblock print by Ito Takashi in a winter landscape. You can see, look at that detail. Gorgeous, gorgeous piece. And it was hand signed with right here. And I actually used AI to help determine whether this was not only an original, but also the date range in which these were made. And AI, if you're not already using it, you got to get on board because it is helping me tremendously in trying to understand not only these art pieces, but how much how much they go for. So in this one, it had me measure the seal at the bottom of this particular art piece. And if it was 6 millimeters, it actually was an original from around 1946 to 56 or somewhere in that range. And it checked out. So we were at 6 millimeters. I was able to document that, put that in my description in the listing. Again, it was really hard to understand the pricing on something like this. There was only 2 other Takashi pieces listed online. Neither were in this type of condition or the type of print. But I went ahead and tried to guess as best as I could and threw up $325. But it actually sold for $240. I took an offer, and it sold in 12 days. I want to share with you a snapshot of the current numbers on this one sale. that we went to, and I just wanted to tell you that I use Flipwise. I love it. It is so great as far as maximizing my time and doing these back-end data points that I just do not like doing. I like to get out there and find stuff and sell stuff. I'm not one to want to sit at home and input data for an hour because I need to get my numbers right. Flipwise really helps put this all in perspective for me. It's mainly used for automation with eBay. However, I do input manually the numbers into the system, which it automatically generates my net profit and gross sales. And it really shows me whether or not I would do this sourcing strategy again or not, or if I'd go to a neighborhood garage sale again. It just really helps educate my decisions moving forward in my new sourcing strategy. So you can see here I have a gross sales of $956 with a net profit of $794 with some items still that haven't sold. And so I'm probably going to say I could easily get over $1,000 on this sale in net profit. What's really cool here is that since I utilize Marketplace a lot, I'm able to cut down on a lot of fees. You wouldn't get this ratio on eBay, right? So I actually have a lot of balance with Facebook Marketplace and eBay, in which the bigger items, the bigger ticket items, I'll typically sell on eBay. But for all the other items, I either can do a local pickup or I can work directly with the buyer through Marketplace if they reach out to me. So that's kind of been my strategy there, to get those fees and costs down to get the highest ROI possible. So to recap, we basically spent $90 and less than an hour of our time finding these items that sold relatively quickly, less than a month. And one of those items actually sold for the exact amount that we paid for the entire lot, and that was the ladder. So it was a really long, large ladder that you definitely need a truck to haul home with. But my husband picked it up and he sold it on Craigslist within 3 days for $90. So that pretty much covered everything, which was a success. And that really what made the whole trip worth it, especially hauling something that large. But not only did I gain additional customers on Marketplace, I learned a lot from this sale. Definitely items I've never seen before, and it really made me excited because I am continually trying to grow my Rolodex of what is out there in this world, and this definitely pushed me to new limits. And so the next video, I actually really want to go over some of my top sales from the month of June and what I did to gain those sales and shifting strategy away from other platforms to one that maybe you wouldn't expect. Stay tuned.